This episode is brought to you by Pine Melon. Pine Melon is a next-generation grocery delivery app that partners with over 200 local farmers, ranchers, and producers in Colorado to help make fresh, locally sourced foods available to the Denver community at fair prices. And this month, Pine Melon is celebrating Earth Month by highlighting their commitment to sustainability. They keep their supply chain efficient to help reduce carbon emissions and offer same-day delivery to help reduce food waste. And as a special thanks to CityCast listeners, you can use the code CityCastDenver for $75 off your first order. That's Pine Melon, the farmer's market delivered.
Hey, Denver, maybe you're like me and you spend an embarrassing amount of money on coffee drinks every week. But what if you skip just one of those big old lattes and instead use that money on something super cool like a CityCast Denver membership? Members get perks like ad-free listening, event invites, and special content. And for as little as $8 a month, you can join our membership program and be part of a group that's helping keep this team of journalists around for years to come. Join today at membership.citycast.fm. Thanks. Today on CityCast Denver, an assault weapons ban has passed the State House for the first time and is on its way to the Senate. So me and producer Paul Caroli are talking about the chances of more gun control. Plus, the mayor has some tough talk for Salvation Army and its $10 million contract with the city. Oh, and a celebrity sighting in Westwood. Today is Tuesday, April 16th. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about.
Is Boston the funniest city? It's like a very funny city.
I always thought of it as like an extremely racist city, is what I've always heard about it too.
Yeah.
But
Denver doesn't, I don't think Denver has that reputation as being either like a particularly funny place to make fun of.
No.
I mean, it has a reputation for whiteness.
Right, which is funny to a certain extent. And then you're like, there's not that many good jokes about white people because we're not that fun to make Well, we are fun to make fun of. That's not true. We're extremely fun to make fun of. But I just feel like there's not a lot of depth to us, so there's not a lot you can do with that.
Not a lot of depth, but a hell of a lot of elevation.
That's right.
That's our one thing.
5,280 feet of elevation.
There are other cities that are higher, but ours is exactly 1 mile high.
And we are very proud of it, if you had not heard. If you didn't, I don't know
It's
if you
one
know
of my
the
favorite-
elevation of your city, but we
Off the top of your head?
know ours. A lot of us have it tattooed on ourselves. I think my brother has it on his wrist. Like
I've got
a
it
dork.
on multiple pieces of clothing. I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't think I have any mile higher tattoos or anything like that.
Nothing with the elevation?
No.
Just a check.
Nope. Nope.
Hey, Bree, good morning.
Good morning, Paul.
Welcome to the Tuesday show.
Hi. I'm so tired. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. We got something really fun to talk about. There was a celebrity sighting in your neck of the woods.
I know. And I'm so sad I didn't go and check this out. See him. My husband was there, but were you?
No, give me the background. Give me the whole story. John Leguizamo was in town.
Yeah, I heard John Leguizamo was in town. My husband
Yes.
said, we heard he's coming through Westwood. And then he went to sort of gawk and see. And I forgot about it. And I was sick. And so I didn't go. And as a huge fan of John Leguizamo's 90s show on Fox, House of Buggin', and The Pest, one of the greatest movies of all time, I'm sad I didn't go. But did you go?
I was thinking about it. Megan wanted to go to the Pozole Fest in Westwood.
yeah, that
so we
was
were
this
on
last weekend,
Morrison
too.
Road. And I thought we were going to be on Leguizamo watch like all afternoon. Because like that would be the kind of thing he would go to, right? If you're going to come and showcase like the Hispanic character of this neighborhood in this particular city. And that's your whole thing.
Neighborhood.
Yeah. And this festival was awesome. They did have a few camera people like with nice big cameras that I thought that could
filming
be
it.
MSNBC right there doing like B-roll.
I think they set up a whole festival looking thing also for him.
Really?
From what I understand. Because he
Wow.
wanted to come and check out the neighborhood.
I mean,
so.
when Leguizamo's in town, you roll out the red carpet.
Absolutely.
He's the man.
I actually saw some footage on Councilwoman Sandoval's Instagram. She was around, I think.
Fun.
So I'm curious to see what it comes out like, because I would love to see what John Leguizamo thought of our city.
Me too.
But it is I got excited because it is something that people outside of our city don't know.
Yeah.
That we have this really rich cultural heritage around, I mean, sort of the Spanish speaking diaspora, but particularly Chicano civil rights and these really beautiful things about our city. And there's a lot of art that showcases that. And just like, Westwood, if you're going to show off Denver, that's a cool ass neighborhood.
Yeah. I mean, if I was applying for the job of tourism director at Visit Denver, my pitch would be Westwood. This is the future. This is the secret next thing that people are going to love about Denver that don't live here.
Could you get on it? Because the city of Albuquerque is continuing to advertise in Westwood.
I've seen those two, actually.
And again, me, biggest fan of Albuquerque.
Mhm.
But like, you could also just like
Step
enjoy
in.
Westwood.
Yeah. All right.
All
Let's
right.
get to the real news.
Yeah.
Not the celebrity news. Oh,
No.
let's shout out to Axios Denver and Elena Alvarez, by the way. She's also been covering the Leguizamo watch over in Westwood.
I love their TV. They're honing in on TV in Colorado
It's
because
so
it's a
fun.
huge thing here
Yeah.
that we don't necessarily pay as much attention to as we should. So thank you, Elena, for keeping us on
I
top
keep
of that.
telling my wife I should be watching more TV.
Yeah.
Anyway, we
Anyway.
got news to talk about.
We do, because over the weekend, legislators were working.
They were working really hard.
There was this conversation and legislation around guns, House Bill 1292. Again, they were working on it on a Sunday. And I think that says a lot about what a big deal this is. But this is about
says a lot about where they are in the session and maybe how little they've gotten done and how many of them are up for re-election.
That's true. I mean, this is a topic you can't sleep on. So there was an assault weapon sale ban conversation. But the gun conversation is beyond the legislation at the Capitol. What is going on?
Yeah. So what's going on is there's this weird moment happening right now at the Capitol around guns, because there is both this one piece of legislation that's being pushed by some, I would say maybe further to the left members of the House, Tim Hernandez and Elizabeth Epps, both Denver representatives, both relatively new faces of the legislature, but they've managed something really special here, and that's to push this proposal for an assault weapons ban further than anyone has pushed it before.
Which is, I mean, that's precedent setting.
Yeah, it passed in the House on Sunday, and that hasn't happened before for this particular proposal.
That is so. Why? Why do we think this is happening? What's the change? What's the shift here in the Capitol? Representation?
Well, for one, I think we should start with the fact that Tim Hernandez, past guest on CityCast Denver, is the first Gen Z member of the House of Representatives. So age, generations, that's a huge factor that's changing all the time.
I was going to say, if we're talking about guns, we're talking about an entire generational shift here where a generation has experienced nothing but post-Columbine public spaces, right?
Yeah. I mean, think about all the kids at East High School last spring. All of those kids are 18 now. They're voters. All of those seniors at East High School.
And they've had a totally different experience in school and in the world than, I don't know, some millennials and especially Gen X and beyond. So what does the governor think about this? I don't know if this particular bill or at least the gun conversation in general.
Yeah, that's where this starts getting, things are going to start getting really challenging for this proposal right now. So it's passed in the House. Looks like it's going to have a really tough road in the Senate, where a lot of the Democrats are a lot more skeptical about what sounds like just as much like they might have their own political concerns in their own constituencies. Like some of these Democrats are in swing districts where guns are just still kind of a hardline issue for a lot of conservatives, and they think they might be vulnerable. So they're perhaps concerned about that. They're perhaps concerned about whether or not this would stand up to a court challenge. The Supreme Court, in particular, has been a little bit more tighter to the letter of the law when it comes to the Second Amendment. Like the originalist interpretation. Clarence Thomas wrote this decision in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin a couple of years ago, where he pushed it a little bit further than it's been before. He's now set the precedent that the government must demonstrate that a proposed regulation is consistent with the nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation. So that, to me, feels specifically designed to stop this kind of like big step forward when it comes to gun regulations, which is what a lot of folks that are working on this, especially young people, are really fighting for, is that big step. When are we going to take that big step?
Which is what a lot of folks that are working on this, especially young people, are really fighting for, is that big step. When are we going to take that big step? And it looks like we've taken a little bit of it.
Yeah.
But it remains to be seen what the outcome will be.
Yeah. Yeah. And at the same time, I mean, there's also this whole other part of it, which is, like I said, there's a lot of conservatives in this state. We're talking about a state body here. The Republicans were unanimously against this, and also the 9 Democrats in the House that joined them. But it's because for a lot of these conservative communities, as Representative Ryan Armagost, a Republican from Berthoud, said, this covers 80% of modern firearms. How can we take that right for people to purchase a tool? He sees it as a tool. And then the NRA was like, these guns that are proposed to have the sale banned of, these are rifles, pistols, shotguns that Coloradans use for hunting, target shooting, and self-defense. That's why it's complicated, is because it's the self-defense stuff, which is obviously also debatable, but then it's also the hunting and the target shooting and like all the bullets that are shot that are nowhere near people.
Right. So it's really about definition and usage of
I think so. I think
guns.
That's why it's so challenging. There's so many types of guns, and that's the governor's, to bring us back full circle, that's his main point against this. He told the Colorado Sun recently, he's long been skeptical of discussions around this kind of equipment versus that kind of equipment.
I mean, I can see also he's always trying to balance the balancing act between the rural-urban divide. He's representing all of Colorado. He's a Boulder guy.
Mm-hmm. With a libertarian streak.
But also it's like, thinking about he has to really be strategic when he's thinking about an issue like guns, which seems to, I don't know if it impacts different parts of the state differently, but at least people think about it differently, kind of depending on where you live.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's about culture. That's what some of the other Republicans were talking about, which I thought was fascinating because it was about like changing the culture. There's a culture of guns. Guns are part of the culture for a lot of people. Like you grow up with them. It's just part of your life. It's part of your relationships with your loved ones.
Yeah, but I also find that to be sort of like coded as like class or urban versus rural kind of stuff where there are guns in the city, though, too. And some folks would argue we talked to that gentleman about self-defense. I think having guns on yourself for your protection. He was a Black man that provided security and was in favor of that. And that was a very controversial show for us, actually.
Very much so.
But I just bring that up to say within these urban-rural divides, there's also nuance in those conversations.
100%. 100%.
And
culture follows policy sometimes, right. In urban areas, maybe some of the reason why we feel differently, or many people do, is because we have decades now of different regulations and tougher access to firearms.
So what's next for this bill? Do we know?
What's next is it's going to the Senate, where they're going to have their own debates about it. Maybe they'll have their own ideas about it. It's getting to crunch time. Like I said, there's only 3 weeks left in the session. They got a lot of stuff they want to deal with. So this one does have a tough road ahead. It does have one credit. Senator Julie Gonzalez of Denver, the Democrat. We've had her on the show before. Yes. She's quite influential in the House these days. She's the number 3 ranking Democrat. And she just a couple of weeks ago decided, or she agreed to take up this bill, and she's going to be the point person to run it. So maybe it could go.
That makes it even a little more interesting to me because she's really good at working with both sides. She's very well known as someone who's willing to get into the trenches with both sides and have these conversations. And while she is more left-leaning, obviously, she's a Democrat, maybe isn't so much so as some of her counterparts, or at least folks that she works with also regularly. And so I think her taking it on says something about the ability or desire to make this work.
I 100% agree. I think she is right there in the middle. She's open to talking to Republicans, but also both sides of the Democratic Party as well.
Yeah.
That's my prediction. I think we're going to have a great conversation about this policy proposal.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what she does with it as well.
And I'm curious what listeners think, too,
Yeah.
about this proposal. Do you all want to see it go further? Should we stop here? Is this just a waste of time because the court would strike it down? Let us know what you think about assault weapons.
Or maybe you live in the city now, but you grew up in a more rural area. I'm always interested in people's perspectives because I have a ton of friends from like smaller towns, mountain towns, Eastern Plains towns. I'm thinking about my friends in Brighton and Loch Buoy, but also in Montrose and Grand Junction. And a lot of them grew up in a different kind of culture with guns and then came to the city, and there's a very different culture here too. So I'm curious what people think. Okay, well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, more news.
This episode is brought to you by the Museum of Outdoor Arts. Because on Sunday, April 28th, the museum is hosting La Primavera Festival, a celebration of spring, to kick off event season at Marjorie Park. La Primavera Festival is a family-friendly event inspired in part by the Gaelic Bealtaine celebration and European May Day, marking the beginning of summer. And the star of the show is really something special. They're premiering the latest permanent installation by local artist Lonnie Hansen. It's called The Cabinet of Curiosities and Impossibilities. Hansen describes it as an enchanting homage to English curio shops, featuring a collection of relics from fairy tales and nursery rhymes that tell stories about early optics, geometry, magical tools, celestial wonders, and more. The festival includes a pancake brunch, live Celtic music, maypole dancing, flower crown and basket making, yard games, and a bar for adult beverages. Tickets are available now at moaonline.org. That's moaonline.org.
This episode is brought to you by ShipStation. If you run an e-commerce business, you know how much work it takes to produce something great while dealing with complicated shipping issues. That's why over 130,000 companies have turned to ShipStation, an innovative tool that allows you to focus less on shipping and more on building your brand. With ShipStation, you can manage orders, label printing, reporting, and customer service on one easy-to-use dashboard. You'll reduce warehouse costs with reliable enterprise solutions and save thousands on shipping costs with discounts up to 89% off. Plus, you can effortlessly import orders from everywhere you sell online. So, turn your shipping challenges into opportunities for growth. Go to ShipStation.com and use code POD to sign up for your free 60-day trial. That's ShipStation.com, code POD.
And we're back.
Next up, the ongoing security dilemma at the former Doubletree shelter, where the operator, Salvation Army, has been under criticism increasingly, I would say, the last few weeks, since the March 16th killing of 2 residents, which are not the only deaths at that shelter since Mayor Mike opened it last year in the context of his broader House 1000, now all-in mile-high effort to end homelessness in his first term. We talked about this last with Kyle Clark from 9 News, but a big story from Joe Rubino dropped in the Denver Post this morning. Bree, what's the latest?
Well, it was kind of just putting into question is whether folks are safer on the street or in these shelters. It has been an ongoing conversation since the mayor opened these 5 sort of shelter extensions in hotels. The hotels turned shelter, in particular the Doubletree that you were talking about, where the shootings occurred in Northeast Denver. And the big explosive part of this conversation within the Denver Post reporting from Joe was that the mayor basically said he's been concerned about safety at these shelters from day one, and he feels that things have only gotten worse.
Which is such a huge quote, such a comment on a city contractor.
Yeah, that they're paying $10 million to operate these shelters.
Including $800,000 for security explicitly.
Yes. Which I found the comments from the spokesperson for Salvation Army around what that $800,000, what's going on with it, to be a little bit murky. Like they're working on it. And the gentleman said the struggle is finding security that is trained in trauma-informed care. So you can't just hire some random security firm that doesn't know how to handle mental health crisis, substance use crisis.
Sure. You can't have front-range patrol going in there.
Dealing with folks with PTSD. Basically is their argument for why they hadn't stepped up the security. But the mayor's office, I think after the shootings, was like, well, if you're not going to do it, we're going to do it. So they hired private security. They locked down a bunch of the entrances at this Doubletree in particular, and now they're filtering folks through one entrance. And the folks that Joe talked to in the story that are residing at this shelter right now said that he talked to a couple who said that they had felt safe until those shootings happened. And up until that point, nothing really felt too unsafe to them. They'd both been there. It's a couple that the thing that struck me about their story was something that I hear about a lot of unhoused folks, which is they're just trying to get themselves back on their feet, but they're also like doing really basic stuff, like trying to get a hold of their birth certificates. So, this was like their purpose in life. But I guess I just want to say is like, they're working on stuff to get out of the shelter. And this is what the shelter was providing, a safe place for them to put their stuff and sleep at night. And then they could go out and, get some stuff going for themselves.
Yeah.
And they said they felt fine until this shooting happened.
Until the shooting, though.
Yeah.
And I wonder if they maybe feel a little bit more similar to this other person who Joe quoted, Mary Anna Thompson, who is an advocate for the homeless, who was formerly homeless herself. During a public comment for city council earlier this month, she described the Doubletree as a war zone.
Yeah.
What did you make of that? That's really stuck out to me.
I have to say, I didn't understand what she meant. There wasn't enough color there for me to understand. A war zone is in the folks that are living there feel like they're under attack or not safe? Or
that's what I took from it. I mean, bullets flying.
Yeah.
That's what I would associate with a war zone. And there were these 2 killings. So it sounded to me like she felt unsafe.
And she said that it seems like the city doesn't feel like they care about unhoused people, which I don't know. This is such a complex situation. The mayor is trying to do something, which is remove folks from encampments and bring them into a space where they can be safe and hopefully transition eventually out of there. And the security was a big issue with that. Actually, the Denver Post reported there were hundreds of calls to these shelters in the last couple of months, and that felt concerning. But Police Chief Ron Thomas said, in context, it's less than they were getting for the 11 dispersed encampments throughout the city. So he's saying even if there were 911 calls, or even if officers were making calls to get more support to these spaces, it was less work than they were having to do out in the encampments.
Huh.
So
I guess that's the answer to the question posed by the headline.
Yeah, it's like I don't know. There's so many aspects to this story that feel undone or feel not finished yet. And I think one of them is what you were talking about, the $800,000 that was supposed to go to security. Okay, well, what's going on with that if the city is now paying for security?
Do we know?
Well, so the $10 million contract for the former Doubletree, now shelter, was approved by city council in November. This was a $10 million contract for Salvation Army to operate that space. And they were supposed to be using $800,000 of that to pay for security. And now Cole Chandler, who's the head of Johnston's homelessness initiative, said the administration is looking to amend the contract and take that $800,000 out.
Oh, interesting.
Because they're not apparently doing what they were hoping they would do with it. The city's saying, we're paying for it. We're not paying you to do it if you're
nothing.
If you're not doing it.
Yeah.
So it just feels
sense.
like one of those ongoing 3 or 4 months is not a lot of time, I think, to examine how successful something is. So I think in a year from now, we'll really know how this House 1000 into the All-In Mile High project is really going for the mayor.
Yeah, interesting.
All right, well, we're going to take another quick break. And when we come back, questions, thoughts, and ideas from you, our brilliant listeners. And we're back. We always love to hear from you, the folks that listen to us every day, because this is really a two-way conversation. And we love to hear what you have to say about the things that we bring to this show. So we have an email?
We got an email.
What do we have, Paul?
We have an email from Ann S. on losing power.
Give a little backstory.
Happily. This was in response to a conversation we had on the show on Friday with my old podcast pal, Lauren Gifford, and our friend Justine Sandoval, our politics and green chili correspondent, about Excel and the wind last week and their preemptive de-energization. Still getting used to that word.
It was controversial,
Very
right?
controversial, yes. And many, many tens of thousands of people lost power. So anyway, Ann S. writes, thank you for reporting on this. I live in Wash Park, the middle of the city, and I suspect that Excel turned off the power on the streets close to the park. Oh, interesting.
Oh.
We had no notice. What info we did receive was inaccurate, was off Saturday through Tuesday, and no prep for how to deal with a long power outage. I am outraged at the thought that Excel has a team somewhere thinking it was brilliant to execute this plan, but no attention given towards ensuring those impacted knew what was coming, as well as to plan to restore power immediately, like within 12 hours. Here are the things that we dealt with. Okay, I'll get to that list. But what do you think about this so far?
I'm with Ann in that I get annoyed because sometimes Excel will send you these like how to save money on your energy bill. And it's like this detailed email about like, I don't know, getting new windows, whatever.
Like that, yeah.
But then when you actually need like in the moment information, you like can't. You're Googling frantically. Is this what's going on? Again, like she said, we don't know how long it was going to last. There was no information. And so I'm just like, the flow of communication felt frustrating.
Yeah, for sure. But I think it's interesting, this theory about Excel turning off the power close to the park.
I know. My mom didn't lose power. She lives right on the park.
Oh, interesting.
So, interesting.
Maybe it's that. Because that would sort of connect with the whole idea of the preemptive shutoffs, which is like, don't let down power lines spark wildfires. And so the park might be somewhere that would happen. Although hard to imagine that in Wash Park.
I know, it's like a lot of trees.
I guess a lot of trees.
I guess, but I don't know. As our guest pointed out on Friday, that precipitation had been high around the last couple of weeks, so it felt strange. But at any rate, what else did Ann share with us?
Okay, here are some other things that Ann S. dealt with during the blackout. Some food products needed to be thrown away. Some frozen meat products becoming partly thawed. Do I throw out or refreeze? Meat is so expensive.
Seriously.
Yeah, that is a tough call.
Paul, you've got a freezer full of a pig. You wouldn't want to lose
Oh my
pork
God.
choppy.
I would be so upset.
Number 2?
Number three.
Number 3. Right.
Year 3 of pork choppy. Yeah. Did not, some of these are like not that big a deal, Ann S. Not to diminish your experience. Did not realize the ice in my freezer would melt and leak onto the wooden floor, which I did not notice until now. I see that several planks around the refrigerator are, this sucks, are warped and damaged. I literally just had my kitchen floor refinished 1 month ago. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. That took me on a journey.
Furious.
Me too.
I would be furious. Getting your floors redone is really, really expensive. It's something that happens like once in the lifetime of you owning a home, usually.
My God.
Ugh.
That's got to be, oof. All right, here's the next. Oh, this one's interesting. Ann S. says, thank God I have a gas stove. Ron DeSantis over here. As that was the only way we could heat or cook food for 3 days. Once Denver City Council outlaws gas stoves, it is going to suck for people during these outages. If Excel continues this plan, Denver City Council should absolutely not touch our gas appliances. Hot take.
But I had the same thought that Ann did. Yes, because I've been really thinking about this shift after we had that really interesting conversation with Sam Brash from CPR about the benefits of electric stoves and like them being comparable for cooking and, But then I thought in this situation, we go all electric and then they decide when they shut our power off or not. I also was a little bit like, this feels like I'm not going to be as prepared as I'd like to be.
Yeah.
So I'm with you a little bit on that.
Honestly, yeah. I hadn't thought about that.
Well, we always love to hear from you. You can give us a call, 720-500-5418. The CityCast Denver hotline is always open. And you can comment on any episode we've done. How many have we done, Paul? 800?
812?
Any of the 812 episodes we've done. If you have a thought about something, give us a call. Again, 720-500-5418. We love voicemails, but if you're voicemail shy, you can always text us as well. Well, Paul, thanks for joining me.
See you next time.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why not take a minute to tell John Leguizamo about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to our morning newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See you later. Yeah, that's the household I grew up in. My dad always said, I owned one gun in my life, and it was because I got an apartment and it had a mantle, and I thought, what goes on a mantle but a gun? So I bought a gun and I put it up there.